kingdom of heaven will be like 10 young women who took their lamps to wait for the bridegroom. 5 were wise, 5 were not so wise, foolish. For this will be heaven. When I was a child, and even as a young adult, I often wondered what heaven would be like. I envisioned a world of peace, perfection, cloudless blue skies, warmth, freedom, no rules, just freedom. But wisdom in what was happening too. The freedom didn't cause chaos, but nonetheless there was freedom. And animals, lots of animals, at peace, where the lion would lay with the lamb. My dogs, my cats, all kinds of animals. In other words, basically I thought maybe heaven is a place where things feel good and I feel good about myself. And yet at the same time, my childhood was checkered with untimely deaths of a few classmates. Tragedies that I was never able to overcome or understand, make any sense of. Even when I was 11 years old, and a fairly popular classmate of mine, very cute, very athletic, all the teachers loved her, but she didn't play the role of teacher's pet. It's just that all the teachers loved her, all the students loved her. In my eyes, it seemed to me like everybody loved her. And yet, during that one summer day, she was out riding her bike and was struck and killed by a driver who just didn't see her. I don't think he was even going that fast. I think he was going 30, 35 miles per hour. But she was killed. And even then, I remember thinking to myself, it should not have been Sarah. Sarah was so wonderful. She was so cool. Everyone loved her. She could have been the first female president of the United States. It shouldn't have been Sarah. It should have been me. And those thoughts and convictions only grew stronger and more muddled when exactly 1 year later, the very following summer, I was out riding my bike and was hit by a car that was going about 40 miles per hour. And I got up and brushed myself off and basically walked away from the scene of the accident almost without a scratch. I have never been able to make heads or tails of that parallel experience that I had with Sarah. But in any case, what does seem fairly clear to me is that I did not see heaven as a place that people necessarily want to go to. Not prematurely, anyway. I saw, and in fact I continue to see, that life is a gift that should be celebrated, that should be enjoyed, and that should be honored a really, really long time. And I know that I am not alone in this belief either. I've spent several years as a chaplain for a few different children's hospitals in Atlanta and Philadelphia. And I continue to believe that losing a child and even experiencing the death of a child is one of the most unnatural, counterintuitive experiences one could possibly have. There is a general collective belief that infants and children are expected to grow up and to become adults and to live into the world, to pass on a legacy. There is some order, some natural, predictable progression that's expected in life. And then at the end of an anticipated period of time, well, then one might be able to look forward to heaven. Then one might be able to look forward to joining the heavenly communion of saints and to standing in the presence of our Father, Mother, Creator God. That incident with Sarah happened in the summers of 1981 and 1982. And fast forward now, from then to 2017, and I am now old enough to know that sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. I now know that things are not always predictable. We can do everything in our power to try to be good people, to try to be kind to others, to try to live a healthy lifestyle, to try to be judicious. And yet sometimes the pain and the chaos finds us anyway. Ideas about heaven seem like a distant childhood fantasy when either you or someone you know suddenly falls upon hard times. In consideration of this parable, I have known plenty of people, and maybe you have too, who have always worked hard, who have always tried to do the right thing, who have always tried to live within their means, who have tried to eat right and to exercise. They have tried to be wise. They are people like the bridesmaids of this story who thought that for sure they're good. Everything's fine. Surely we're going to get into heaven. We got this. And then all of a sudden, they find themselves in the darkness. Suddenly, their lamps have gone out. Suddenly, they're laid off. Suddenly, they learn they have some life-threatening illness. Suddenly, they recognize that their marriage is falling apart. Suddenly, they are in darkness. Complete darkness. Sheer and utter darkness. Now, I would never want to downplay how heavy the gravity of darkness can feel. But I do think that perhaps the darkness is only of this world. That is indeed the Christian hope. That however dark this world gets, the Christian message inspires us to believe in the one who is the light to the nations. This message in this parable from Matthew, this message of the wedding for which we should be prepared, for which we should eagerly anticipate, it is the message of hope that we find through Jesus Christ, the bridegroom. But the message here is more than just about a wedding. This is an age-old admonishment against being foolish. Most of the Proverbs warn against being foolish and encourage people throughout the centuries. Be wise, don't be foolish. Be wise, don't be a fool. It even reminds me of some old blues songs. It reminds me of some Bonnie Raitt. Don't be a fool. Women, be wise. Keep your mouth shut. Don't advertise your man. Don't be a fool. Don't advertise your man. Don't be a fool. Be wise. Because if you are foolish, you will not be permitted to the wedding. You'll be cut off. You'll be voted off the island. This parable splits the group right in half by telling us that all of these women started out on an even playing field. There were 10, and they were all invited to the wedding. They were all waiting for the bridegroom. All 10 were expecting to go to that wedding. Initially, there were no apparent differences between all of these 10 people. But the difference was in the waking. Wise up. For when you wake up, you're going to need that oil. They all awoke, and some women were ready. Some had the extra oil. They were prepared. But the foolish, they were not prepared. They needed a little more time. They were left in the dark, in the dead of night, with no oil for their lamps. Now, it is said that the oil in this parable is very symbolic, just like the parable itself. The oil is the Holy Spirit. Those without oil are not ready. Those without the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in their hearts will not be ready. The oil is medicinal. It is healing. And the oil fuels the flame that provides the light. It sustains the light. The wise women are in the light. The wise women are with the light. The wise women are of the light, sustaining the light, defeating the darkness with their wisdom. With their wisdom, they defeat the darkness with their own readiness, with their own judiciousness. These 5 women were not chosen per se. No. The odds were 50-50. The choice was theirs. Just as the choice is yours and mine. Be wise, don't be foolish. And this choice of wisdom versus folly is nothing new under the sun. The book of Proverbs is full of these admonishments, like I said before, against foolishness. And I'm going to quote a few for you. Proverbs 11, the fool will be the servant of the wise. Proverbs 14, every wise woman builds her house, but the foolish plucks her own house down. Proverbs 21, there is treasure to be desired and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but the foolish man spends it all up. In this case, the penalty for being foolish seems awfully harsh, doesn't it? The penalty for being foolish and being without oil is so extreme. The foolish are not permitted into heaven, into the Christian banquet. And the wise with the oil are. Absent from this message is the word of grace. We know that. We know that God provides grace. We know that there is grace abounding. I personally could not imagine looking into the eyes of God and hearing God say to me, I do not know you. You have no oil. I do not know you. Such rejection. Such a crushing blow. But the gospel, according to Matthew, tends to have a moral to each story, a summary or an explanation, urging the listeners to take heed. It does seem extreme, but the point is to urge people, take heed, be aware that the light is knowledge, the light is understanding. The light is your readiness. And the darkness is ignorance, obliviousness, generally not thinking. And just as Aesop's fables or any other proverb or adage, Matthew wanted to be certain that his listeners took heed. Heaven is coming. Be ready. Live each moment filled with gratitude, filled with oil, filled with the Holy Spirit. Be ready. Ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. So saith the Reverend and poet John Donne from about 400 years ago. Ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Be ready. The key to Christian readiness is to be ever filled with the Holy Spirit. Not by living in fear, not by living with anxiety, not by fretting over the minute details. Christ is perfect love, and perfect love casts out all fear. Jesus is repeatedly noted as saying, "Peace I bring to you, peace I give to you." So even though the core message of this parable is that Christ is coming, some will make it in and some will not. It would stand to reason that we should not stand in fear and trembling, but rather in anticipation of the perfect peace, the perfect love. The love that surpasses all understanding. Live every moment as though the perfect love may come for you at that moment. Be ready for that perfect love. Be ready, my friends.